Hello, my name is Alex Delk. I've worked in hospital and I've worked in reference lab. My total experience with blood bank is 25 years. And I've been using Antigen Plus since 1999, maybe end of 98. It's come a long way since then. So we're just going to start with what we see on the screen here. Oh, and remember, if you have any questions, just go ahead and interrupt me and I'll go ahead and stop and answer the question because I want you to kind of follow along and make sure you're understanding what we're talking about rather than just keep going and then people have questions that they weren't sure of and weren't able to continue on because it's kind of going to build on everything we talk about. It's going to build on each other. So we're going to just look at what's on the screen right now. You have your two main menus. We don't really go to the add edit cells too much anymore because that's all automated. We'll talk about that later. That's this tab. If you click it there, it's a place you can just add cells. We're going to spend our time in the search cells area is where we're going to spend the majority of our time. And when we're here, you can add your patient if you want. You can just do your searches like Alan talked about without, just print your panels and do them manually. That's how I've used it for most of the time I've used Antigen Plus. And these colors here really don't mean anything other than just a way to separate the systems. That's all that really is. So it's true, I believe the red ones have to do with enzymes. So that they're destroyed by enzymes, and the yellows are destroyed by DTT. But other than that, they're just there to separate out the systems. Okay, I do want to show you the result columns that we set up for the demo. We're not going to be using them all. We just wanted to have something to show you. You can make this look however you want. For the immediate spin column, we went ahead and put it in as unevaluated, which is what you would want to do because at immediate spin in 37, you're going to be detecting primarily IgM antibodies, occasional IgGs at 37. I suppose you could detect some at immediate spin as well, but we don't want to do exclusion, rule anything out at those phases. So that's why they're unevaluated. Our other columns are pretty much all IAT, including enzymes and DTT. And if you're using enzymes and DTT, just know that the enzymes are not going to rule out things that are destroyed by enzymes, and DTT is not going to rule out things that are destroyed by DTT. So that's don't pick those type of columns if you just want to do a general rule out. And just as an example, for 37, we just wrote 15-minute 37 lists. And for the LIS, which is our, we only have 3 characters here, that's our 15-minute list IAT reading. And you can put here, if some people prefer to write AHG, some people like to write IgG, whatever you're comfortable with as a description is fine. That's just going to appear at the bottom of your panel. So you can see, all of your results at the bottom for each column will be down there. And you'll see that in a moment when we get to it. And you can decide if you want check cells or not. For most of, actually, I think all of the automated systems out there right now, there aren't check cells, so you'll see them come across without check cells. When we do manual tube method, we're going to mark the check cells off for those areas that need it. I don't think I set up a gel column here, but if we wanted to, we could set it up on the fly. I think we're going to actually do that in one of the demos, so you'll see how we do that. And the last thing here is your check cell threshold. Everything's included here, but I wouldn't recommend anyone use anything less than a 1+. Those were just in the list. They're here, but I wouldn't select that as a threshold. It's 2-week, really. But we did also add a check. I know some labs, the labs I've worked in, most of them have wanted to have a just a check mark rather than a graded reaction. It's been one of the reasons for that, whether you're aware or not, some people are, some people aren't, is that when you're reading check cells, you're really reading a mixed field reaction. You're reading the negative cells that was already there, plus the reactive cells, they're usually 3+ reactive on their own. And when you put them together, you're really getting a mixed field reaction. So if you're putting a grade there, some people argue, well, I should be putting like a 2+ MF for mixed field. So because of that, the labs I've worked in have all decided to use check. But I've also worked in a couple labs that did use, the 1 through 3+. I don't think I've ever seen a 4+. That would be, not mixed field, usually. Okay, I guess you can't see mixed field 4+. Time to time. Okay, so that's that part of it. So first thing we're going to do is just get into a very simple case here. We're just going to go ahead and do a manual as if we're just doing tube method with a tube screen. Search for a patient. This patient, I don't think we have anything here. No, not her. Patient. We're going to start over on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just use that as a date of birth, and we're just going to add this patient. So if somebody start with brand new, and I already know one of the screens, so lots, of course, you'll have the screen in your hand, or you'll have the bottle in your hand. So I know it's 20460 is a screen. So if I just go ahead and search for that, it's going to bring up my screen cell from Immucor, and you can either select them individually over here, or at the bottom, there's a button to select all matches. So if you're just going to run everything, you just select all matches. Then there's a clear all if you want to just get rid of that and start over. There's a view selected cell, which here, if you wanted to, here's where you could do your print preview. And you can format this for your lab, but this is what it would look like. You can format it so it looks a little different, more customized for yourself. And then you can just write your results on that. You can remove cells from here if you want to remove them from here as well. But for the demo, we're going to go into opening the worksheet. So just know in all the demo where we're doing manual cells, you could do those features. When it's coming from the instrument, you don't have that option because whatever comes from the instrument has to stay in there. You can't really change those. You have to make a new column with whatever results you want to edit. So here comes your patient across, so you can put your results in. And now you would simply start putting in results to your keypad. Most people aren't doing auto controls on screens, but if you did, you can put it in now. In my case, I'm going to do immediate spin, and I'm going to do PEG as a panel. As my IAT reagent enhancement. All right. And then I'm just going to use the 2+ because I didn't set up the check. I'm just going to use the 2+. And so once you have this screen entered, you just come over to the top here and you do File and you save your panel. Remember, like Alan suggested, this is if you want to do everything automated. At this point, you don't really know what you have. You just save your screen. Most facilities are probably going to run a panel if they get a positive screen. Most people aren't going to jump right to a selected cell. Although in a reference lab, if you're short sampled, you probably could do a phenotype on the patient and do a selected cell right off the bat. But in the reference lab I worked in, we did a full panel right off the bat anyway. So what we could do at this point is we just close the screen. We clear all selected cells. Oh, take that back. I want to load that panel back up. I'll just add to it. So if you've already saved it, you can just load it right back up. So it's kind of good that I accidentally closed it. And now you can see, you can just load it back up. What I meant to clear was your search criteria. If I don't clear my search criteria, this lot number here is going to control my search, and it's only going to look within this screen, which I've already selected all the cells. So I clear that search criteria now, and you see the 3 cells are still here. So the cells are still there that already resulted. And I'm going to take panel 19734. So just go to my lot number, and I'm going to look for 19734, and there it is. And I'm going to click search. And I want to run this entire panel. So I'm just going to click on select all matches. That's going to check mark everybody. And I'm going to open my worksheet. Then when I open my worksheet, I'm going to go ahead and start resulting. I'm not going to do immediate spin results because I've already done the spin results and they were negative. The exception would be the auto control. We'll do that just to make sure it's negative, and we're calling it negative in this case. If you wanted to put spin results in, you could, of course, could. Real quick before I move on, the colors will start to appear. Dark blue will mean there's a rule that has happened. In this case, little c can be ruled out anytime there's a C negative, C positive, and there's a negative reaction on that cell. So it'll come up in green and tell you that something's been excluded. If it's light blue, it means there's been an exclusion for that antigen, antibody to that antigen somewhere else. In this case, all of these blue pluses, all this blue just means that it's referring to this cell. If you have that light orange color, that means there's no exclusion for it yet. Okay, so that kind of gets us started on talking about the colors. Okay. Once you have your results in, you start putting in your check cells. And as you do that, you're going to have more of the dark blue appear because you're going to have more exclusions. And as you exclude antibodies, you're going to have your exclusions show up down here at the bottom, and it will tell you how many you've excluded so far. Let's put in the check cells real quick. Okay.
Alex, why don't you expand that screen, make it bigger?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so you have to scroll. Here's your screen, and you can scroll down and see the rest of the panel. And you can see we have more and more dark blue. And let's just go through this real quick. So for D, it says we have 3 rule outs that are double dose. You know, with D, it's a little hard to tell dosage, but we consider all D positives being double dose. And we have 1, 2 that are dark blue, and your third one is here. So that's where the 3 comes from. Okay. Now for big C, we'll have 1 here, and then we have a single dose here from a heterozygous donor. You can see the rule says it fails to rule out C, but it's because we want to have a double dose cell. Now, if all the cells had a reaction with all the D positives, so basically there was an anti-D there, then you can rule out big C in the presence of D. But this cell did not rule out, and it tells you that it doesn't rule out, and the reason why. And you have the similar situation down here as well with this cell. You're also going to see dark orange now in the array. You have 1 here for the E, and that's it, that's dark orange. And you have for K, you have 2 for K. And what that means is this reaction over here, there's nothing else on this row that's positive that could be causing a reaction. So it appears that there's an anti-K. It doesn't conclusively say it's there, but it's pointing strongly in that direction. And similarly with number 10, which is number 7 from that Immucor 19734. You have the same thing, and for big E, you have the same thing happen on number 9. The light orange, you're going to see, well, why isn't it saying the K is there? There's a reaction. Well, because M has not been excluded yet. We do have, this is that line that Alan told you guys about you're going to need to pay attention to, and you probably should. It's an option, but we recommend you put it on there, but some labs don't want it on their sheet because they want the text just to count it themselves. But this is a nice way that you can see how many cells have negative reactions. Like this is one of them. This is one of your cells. It didn't rule it out because it was single dose M, but it's counted down here as a negative reaction to heterozygous donor. So you have 3 of them, but you don't have any double dose. So if your lab allows single dose exclusion from heterozygous donors for M, then you won't need to run anymore because you have 3 already. But the program is going to look for at least 1 double dose from a homozygous donor. And since there isn't one yet, it's going to conflict with the K, so it can't say, well, this 2+ reaction is because of this most likely. It's basically saying maybe, but we're not sure which one. And any place that you see the orange, you're going to see light orange, you're going to see another light orange across from it, or more. Sometimes you see more than one. See multiple, 3 or 4 of them, or 5. And in this example, we don't have one, but you could even have where you have an E and a K, but you have an E and a K positive cell. They would both be the light orange, because you can't say, well, is that reaction because of the E or the K? Well, it's because of both, but you don't get to count it if it's not by itself. It's not isolated. Okay. So when we get to this part right here, what we would do is I would go ahead and save this panel just to save our progress. And I will go ahead and save the screen and panel together. And before I leave, just since all of this is on the screen, I want to explain it. It says at the bottom under evaluation, the following have insufficient negative reactions to exclude by your rules, meaning your exclusion rules, E, K, JSA, and M. And you notice those are the ones that are in dark orange down here at the bottom, E, K, JSA, and M. And as you know, our low incidences, we're not searching for a low incidence unless we have a reason to. So you can just ignore it yourself, or there's a button here. You can say hide low incidence antigens. You could just check mark that, and it will remove the JSA from that comment. So now you just have the M there. There's also one for hide less clinically significant, and that would be things like your Lewis's, your XGAs. But in this case, you know, it does remove M as well, because they're not always clinically significant either. But we're going to want to exclude M just for the demo, just so we can make everything look beautiful up here for you. So we're going to use a double dose cell for that. And if you have multiple different columns, like if you had a list and you had a DTT and you had a vision or you had a Lumina column, you would have a row down here for each of those columns. And you see every column that's up here, there's a column down here. But there were no cells tested for there, so there's no results over here that say what can't be ruled out, because we haven't done any testing on those columns. So now we're going to make the cells E and K negative. And we're going to search for a cell.
Get the lot number out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Take that out. And we're going to search for a cell to exclude M. We don't want to pick that because we want to pick a Immucor cell. That's a manual cell. And if you've already had a cell picked, it would show up down here. I don't know if there's any that's going to show up for this particular search. No, it doesn't look like it. But if you'd already have a cell selected, it would already be check marked. So you're not going to be in danger of check marking it again. And if you check mark a cell that was the same donor on a different panel, it's going to give you a warning. It'll color these like a green or a yellow. So that kind of warns you, hey, you've already got this donor picked from, you know, the screen. You don't need to run it from the panel as well, because that doesn't really do you too much good if you run the same donor. We don't really need to, but I'm going to see if there's a JSA cell that we can pick. It's an Immucor cell. We can run that cell. And now once we're done selecting cells that we want to pick, let me uncheck this real quick. In this array, the dark orange means those are things that have not been excluded in your panel that you've already entered results on. So we have E, K, JSA, and M. So M turned a lighter shade of orange, because if that cell that you picked in the previous search is negative, now M will be excluded. As soon as you select this cell here, that's JSA, that we search for JSA, you'll notice that now the JSA turns a light orange. That means if that cell's negative, then it will be excluded. And some people also like to run another E positive and K positive. I'm not going to for the demo, but I understand the reason for that. You want to show that yes, the things that I expect to be negative are negative when I read them. And just kind of as an internal control, they may want to run a cell that's positive, or you expect to be positive, so that way you're not just reading a whole bunch of negatives. So that is good practice, but we're not going to do that for the demo. And what this result does is negative. And now we're going to expand this so we can look at interpretation. And it just tells us the following have insufficient negative reactions by your rules to exclude E and K. And now you can see we have basically a perfect E. They're both, all three of them in dark orange. Actually, I think we have four. No, three. No, four. There's the fourth one. And 1, 2, 3 Ks. And we have several negatives on the panel. So you've definitely met your rule of 3 for inclusion, more than that for the K, and actually more than that for the negatives for the E. So we're at a point now where we would want to antigen type our patient. And again, you don't have to do this in Antigen Plus. You don't have to do any of this electronic stuff, but we're just showing you everything you can do. And we would come and edit our patient's details. And we're going to put the patient as being big E negative and K negative. If you want to put the rest of the profile in here, you can. You notice you're required to put in a reason why are you doing this. And we're just doing antigen type. And we go ahead and save that. And then we can close it. And then now we can save our panel. And when we save our panel, that's where we can put our actual antibodies in our conclusion. So we decided we were going to call this an anti-E and an anti-K. And then now you would save this. And you can either print it if you wanted to, like we showed earlier, and then someone just sign and review it. Or once you're finished saving it, there is a, I have to move something out of my way so I can see it, but there is a place up here that you can review your panels. I'm logged in as administrator, so I can review my own work, but normally you would have someone else review it if you require a review. And you can have 2 people review it, and it'll document the person that reviewed your panels.
The review is not required. It's available if you want it.
Right. You don't have to do it. It's something that you can do if you want. And then the reviewer would save their reviewed panel that way. If you want to backtrack everything, you can see who did what. And Alan, I think, was mentioning that earlier about the iterations of the panels. Basically, you can't do anything in Antigen Plus and then pretend it didn't happen. So that's one good thing. You know, just like everybody wants that, be able to document on your papers. You know, if you make a mistake, you got to do your CGMP. And well, here in Antigen Plus, the same thing happens. You document something in here, it's going to be in there when you have your save panel. Now, if you make a mistake before you save it, you can fix it. But once it's saved, it's there, and you can't get rid of it. You can fix it and save it again, but you would put a comment as to what you did. You could either, let me go back to save the panel again. Let's create another. You could either put it in the description of the panel, or you can put it in the notes if you had something in addition you wanted to say, either about the workup or about a mistake that was corrected. So that is the first case. So before I go on to the next case, which is the next cases are a little bit more complicated, I wanted to see if anyone had any questions. Right now, I'm just clearing out the fields. The 2 areas you clear all selected cells and clear your search criteria. That way you're starting with a clean slate. And you can get started. The next example we're going to use, I believe you guys are using Neos. It would be the same process if you had the Lumina or the Echo. You know, there's 2 versions of it, I think, right now out there. But we have this set up for Neo. And we would just go to our panel and import your analyzer results. So our first example is going to be a screen here. And we're going to import a screen. And the screen results come over, and then you have to select your patient to add it. Did you have a question, Alan?
No. You're not seeing a lot of patients. I was just going to suggest putting in some other letters that you'll see a longer list, but that's okay.
I have the list of patients for the demo.
Okay.
So we're good. We're good to roll. And you are going to have to put in a sample number when it's coming from an analyzer. That way, you're linking your patient to the sample that came off of the machine. So whatever your specimen number is that you're using in your lab will be the number that you would put in there.
So Alex, are you saying that this program is, if you can interface this to the instrument? So it's...
Yes, that's
Yes,
right. We'll talk about the mechanics of the interface after Alex gets done, but yes, you can get the results from the blood analyzer to flow straight into Antigen Plus and create these kind of panels.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Which is a really nice feature if you want to get those results into Antigen Plus, and then you're not having to type everything in like I did on the manual example. So here, this is a Neo screen, and you saw the results came over, and it had that sample number, and I picked my patient and I put the specimen number. If I put a wrong specimen number, it won't link the two in together. So as long as you're using sample numbers that are unique to a patient, then you should be fine. That's the check. So basically for this screen in the panel, I'm just going to save this panel, and I just type here screen. That's it, and I save it. And once I save it, I'm just going to close everything down here. Just minimize that. I'm going to clear everything out of here again. And then now you're going to go back to your panel and import analyzer results. And we're going to bring in our panel. So of course you get a positive screen. You probably already threw the panel on already. And your panel is going to show up. So you do the exact same thing again. There's your patient requiring your sample. And we're going to save it, but before we do save it, we do have some information here that we can look at now. And it's a little bit more complicated. So what we're going to do is kind of go column by column. And again, if you guys have any questions, we can go over it. Anywhere that we have orange down here in the bottom, that means there's nothing, we can't exclude anything based on with what's in the panel. So we need to look at those columns. And so the first one is we look at the E, and you can see in the top array, they're all light orange. So the computer says, okay, it's not excluded yet, but there's a reaction on there. So we need to kind of look at this. So we do notice we have one negative cell, and that's this cell here. And that cell's negative, the reaction's negative, but it's not double dosed because it's positive for Lily. So because of that, we're not counting it as an exclusion, but we're not really kind of thinking that based on a 2+ reaction. So it's probably not that. So that's not really a suspect right now. It's something we're still going to worry about, but we're not really suspecting it. F. Okay, F is tricky with EmuCore. I'm not sure how your lab is dealing with F. Some labs worry about it a lot, some labs don't. It depends on where you're coming from. But in this particular case, right off the bat, you can see we have a cell here that's an RO little r. In this case, it's, probably most likely an RO little r. And it is little c and little e positive. And it's negative for big C and little e. So that tells us, theoretically, 99.9%, I don't know if there's very many exceptions to that, that's an F positive cell. So we can tell, based on our phenotype, here's another one that would be negative because little r. We can tell the F is excluded. But unfortunately, EmuCore does not provide F on many of their cells. So even though we might have tested a cell, we have to kind of do that manually, unless you pick a cell to exclude F. CW is a low, and typically it's not going to be the lows. I mean, we do get them, but when you have all of this type of reactions, usually you have your common alloantibody and not a low. Same thing with V, same thing with KPA. So we're going to move to the K now. Now in the case of K, we actually have two cells here that we have dark orange that we're saying this antigen is most likely what the antibody is directed against, so anti-K most likely. And we have a 2+ there and another one here. We have a 2+ here. And then similarly with S, we have the same thing. We have 2. And then, the question always comes up, and, we'll go through it. Why up here is the S not? If it's only looking like an E and a K are the 2 main ones that are dark orange over here and over here, why aren't these? Well, this S isn't coming up because KPA isn't excluded, and neither is E. This one because CW is not excluded. This one because E is not excluded, etc. And down here was the example I told you about before, where yes, it looks like there's a K and a big S, but since they're both positive here, yeah, probably both of them are contributing to this 2+, but we can't assign the specificity, this 2+ to one or the other. It's because of both of them most likely. So we can't use that as a way to rule in the antibody. So therefore, it's not going to be dark orange. And then as far as the rest of exclusions go, if it's in the first 2 rows here, homozygous rule outs, that's your double dose, and heterozygous rule outs, your single dose. If it's allowed, those are going to be where you see your numbers, what you can exclude. And the bottom, remember this bottom is just to help you, or if your lab allows exclusion by heterozygous donors, in those particular single dose cases. Okay, so what are we going to do next to try to clean this up? Well, we know we can go after the big E. So that's going to be where we're going to go next, but we're just going to save this panel and we're going to do another panel off of the machine. A lot of times you get your results, you're really not sure yet. While you're doing all this thinking, we just set up another panel. Some labs don't want to do that. They want to go right to selected cell panel, but for the demo, that's what we're going to do for these few cases we're running. And we're just going to save it as ID 416.
Alex, are you going to merge it now, or are you going to merge all 3 together?
No, I'm going to merge it first.
Okay.
Because that's how we would normally do it. So yeah, I'm going to merge it. If that's fine with you, that's what I plan to do.
Yeah. I just making sure I was on the same page.
Yeah. So once we have our screen and our panel done, we look at our screen. We just kind of save and that's it. We look at our panel to get an idea. That's how we do it in the reference lab. And then we're going to go ahead and load our save panel. And you'll see the top 2, since we just did them, are going to be the ones we did. If there was a lot of other work going on, you would just select your 2. You can do control and then select, or you can just do shift arrow and arrow down at the same time and select more than one. So either way, you can select both the lines you want to merge, and you click on merge, and once you merge them together, you're going to have one continuous panel that has both the screen and panel together. Let me move this and make it large. And we're still going to have some of the issues that we had before, except now the E is gone. It's been excluded with one cell. So that kind of cleaned things up a little bit. We're still having the problem with the F, and we still have the issue with the lows. If we remove the lows though, we can see that F down here is the only thing that's a problem overall. And where's that result coming from? The only column we've tested on is the NEO. Okay. So now we would save this panel, and you just type your merge. And that second panel is done now. Since we already looked at one panel, and we're not going to just look at this panel individually, we're just going to go ahead and save it. And then we're going to merge it with the other one and talk about it. And now, since we had the merge panel before, that's going to have it on this one and the top one. So we're just going to select those 2 and merge those, and that'll have all of our results together: our initial screen, our first panel, and our second panel. And yet again, we have the same issue that we had before with the F. The F is just not excluded because of the problem with some of the immucore cells. So at this point, we would just save it and be done. But if you wanted to go ahead and run another cell, because you're like, you know what, I really just want to go ahead and make this look beautiful, you could just do a search for an F positive cell and see if there's anything that comes up. In this case, we would probably be looking for a immucore cell that we can just run manually. It looks like we run that cell on the, we've already run both of these cells, but we probably ran these cells on, of course, the echo. So it didn't have F listed. So that could be enough for some people to say, hey, it's already there, but let's just go ahead and result it. And when I open this worksheet, probably the answer people are going to say, hey, wait a minute. Well, here's your duplicate. This is what it shows you. There's your duplicate saying, hey, you already ran this cell. So this is a perfect example. This cell was on a automated panel from your immucore, from your Neo, and it's also on a liquid cell that you can run by tube method. But everyone's going to say, hey, where do I result it? Well, you just right-click at the top here, and you go ahead and add a result column. And what am I going to test? I'm going to test PEG. So I'm going to leave it as an IET panel. I'm going to call it PEG, and I'm going to put 15-minute PEG HG. Or I'll put IET because I've been using IET all along. Sometimes you use AHG, sometimes you use IET. And we add it. And so now we have a column that we can result it in. And so now when we enter a result, that's going to resolve our F issue. And we can hide our lows, and you see the only thing that's left now is your K and your S. And you also notice there's a new column down here. Not really, you don't have to resolve the column all by itself. We know we can use the Neo to rule out most things, and then we can supplement it with PEG. But it's going to look at just PEG by itself and say what PEG can do. Well, all of this stuff can't be ruled out with PEG, but it doesn't matter because we've already ruled it out based on the Neo. Okay, and then the top one gives you your cumulative exclusions. Okay, so we basically have an anti-K and an anti-S. So again, we're going to go to our patient. We're going to view patient details. We're going to edit K and S, antigen type. Save it. Close it. Update. Save panel. And this is where we put in our answer, what we called it. And I'm going to also put here final.
You can see the patient now has the anti-K and the anti-S attached.
Yes. Yes, right here. And
So
if you
even
go to
if
the
you
page,
get that patient back in, even if they're not reactive to those anymore, you still have the history to tell you not to transfuse.
right. So there you go. Yes. You could just check by, this is what would show up when you just checked for the patient, and it'll have the antibody right there. And then when you're finished with your patient, you just clear out your search criteria, and you're ready to start over. And for our next example, we're going to do an ortho vision screen and panel. So it's going to be the same way. The screen and the panel, I'm just going to go in real quickly. I'm going to bring them in. So it's just I'm just going to do it quickly. That part you guys already have seen. Put that specimen number in so I don't forget. Okay, now we're going to load our panel. And now we're going to actually look at the case after we merge them, and we'll share screen and panel together. So yeah, you're going to have your total of your 14 cells there. And we have the orange that we need to pay attention to. So we have the K, I'm sorry, the CW, the KPA, and the Lutheran A that are our lows. So we can hide that. It doesn't get rid of the orange, but it's the low incidence. You can see Lutheran A, there's not even a Lutheran A cell in the panel, and same with KPA. In this case, there's not one. There is one CW, but there's other orange antigens highlighted that there could be an antibody against. So we're not really going to have them high on our list of priorities right now. So that leaves us with C, JSB, and Duffy A, which is what's listed here. And it's also listed on division right below because that's the only thing we've tested so far. So we've got a pretty good indication that we're probably dealing with a C and a Duffy A, but we have an issue here, and this is another one of those things similar to F with Immucor. With ortho, there's JSB. A lot of times they don't give you the JSA typing to tell you if it's a single or double dose expression. So Antigen Plus is not going to count it and exclude it. We know that the chance that, this cell here, number 3, is JSA positive, and number 6 and number 7 and number 10, the chance of those all being JSA positive is very low. Actually, this one is positive, number 10 is, but the chance that all of them are is very low. So most likely it's already excluded. But we're going to run that other panel and see if that clears it up. So we're going to do that just for the demo. Let's go ahead and save this as a merge. Now we'll go ahead and close this. There we are. Select our patient. Sample number in there. We're just going to go ahead and save this panel. Close everything down. Now we're going to load the panel that we just tested and load the original screen and panel that we had already looked at. We're going to merge it all together. And once it's merged, you probably guessed it already. We have the same issue with JSB. So it really didn't improve our situation. We're still looking at that JSB there. So what we would do is we would just go ahead and say, you know what, let's close this and let's look for a manual cell. I know on Vision, I believe you can run one cell at a time. So we can see if we can find any Vision cells. No, that's not. This looks like a vision probably. So now we can go back to our results panel. And some more things going to happen. There's going to be no place to result it because we cannot result here. It won't let me in there because this is a automated one. So we're going to have to add a result column. Now that we have that there, we can go ahead and put in our cell that's negative here and also our auto control. Whoops, let's take that out. There's no check cell. And now that got rid of our JSP problem. We have one exclusion here, and it was excluded right here. The rule comes up when you hover over it. And now you can see that improved our coloring up here too. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 big C's because we ended up running those 2 panels. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Duffier positives and several negatives for both. So we have a very, very definitive anti-C and Duffier. So the p-value is probably very good. Now we can save this panel. Oh, before we save it, we would want to type our patient. Can't forget that. I could, but then I'll get left a note. Save that. Update our patient. And now when you save your panel, you can put your antibodies in, C and Duffier. You could put something like, that's a previous comment that was used, but that's not what we want to use. See, once you use a note, I believe you can select from it. Alan, that's a question for you, but I believe that's what it is. So here I would put something like, you don't have to do this, but you could. I mean, you could also run an unvision, but I'm just saying manual gel because that's how I put it on the column. It's because I clicked that, that's why that comment came up. And then now I put final, I can save it. And this one would be ready to send in for review. And the person would review it, and then whoever reviewed it would save it again.